Hello, welcome to the marsh tonight. And by the marsh tonight, I mean my living room and the living room of the performers you're going to see here tonight. We've been meeting in Zoom spaces to try to imagine what uh, what might be interesting and entertaining to all of you. And we never quite know what we've got until you are here to receive it. So thank you very much for completing this process for us. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first performer of the evening, direct from New York City. This is Stephen David Dean.
Well, they got a new dance and it goes like this. Bum shoo bum ba bum shoo bum. The name of the dance is the peppermint twist. Bum shoo bum ba bum shoo bum. Do you like it like this? The peppermint twist. Bum shoo bum ba bum shoo bum. It goes around and round, up and down, up and down, round and round, up and down, and a round and round, and a 1, 2, 3 kick, 1, 2, 3 jump. I'm twisting with the peppermint twisters at the Lois Paradise in the Bronx. I'm almost a teenager. I'm going to be 13 in 2 weeks, and I'm twisting with the peppermint twisters. They've been advertising this on radio for weeks. Hey, let's twist at the Lois Paradise. Saturday, February 11, 1962. See the movie Hey, Let's Twist starring Joey D and the Starlighters and Twists with the Peppermint Twisters from the Peppermint Lounge live on stage. Be there or be square. My parents think I'm at the movies with my friends, but I'm here all by myself. None of my friends want to twist with the Peppermint Twisters. I've never been to the movies alone before. I have $12.25 in my pocket. I was supposed to buy a new white dress shirt with cufflinks, a new tie, and a tie pin for my black bar mitzvah suit. My bar mitzvah is a week from today, next Saturday. I can't wait. You see, there was a long line to get into the paradise, and I was afraid I wouldn't get in, so I got online, and now I'm here. But I'm twisting with the peppermint twisters. I'll have to buy the stuff at Alexander's during the week after Hebrew school. Then I'll be getting home late. Maron. After my bar mitzvah, I'll be free. I'll never have to go to Hebrew again, and I can hang out with the kids on the block after school and be cool. You can't be cool going to Hebrew school. I've had to go to Hebrew school after regular school 3 days a week to prepare for this day, for this one day, since I was in 3rd grade. Well, we're in the lobby of the Paradise Movie Theater right now. They set up a stage out here in the main hall under the balcony with real stage lights. They're showing the movie in the auditorium. Did you know that it holds almost 4,000 seats? I did a report on it in 6th grade. Now that I'm finally a teenager, my big sister Maxine is 20 years old and she's no longer a teenager. She's 7 years older than me. She didn't want to come to Twist with the Peppermint Twisters with me either. She has a date tonight. When I was a little boy, about 9, I wanted to go to Alan Freed's rock and roll shows at the Brooklyn Paramount with Maxine and her friends. I was a bigger rock and roll fan than she was. I knew all the bands, all the songs. She told me the show is only for teenagers. I said, I'm a little teenager. Everyone thought it was so cute. I didn't think it was cute. I couldn't wait to be a teenager. And now that I'm a teenager, I thought we can hang out together and go to rock and roll shows. But she can go to the real Peppermint Lounge. My friends are square. They don't really care about rock and roll. You see, it all started a few months before I was born. Back in December 1948, my daddy, Louis, and my big sister, 7-year-old Maxine, are on the New York City subway going to visit Grandma Brooklyn. We call her Grandma Brooklyn because she lives in Brooklyn. We, Mommy and Daddy and Maxine, my big sister, we all lived in the Bronx with my Bronx grandma. We just call her Grandma. When Mommy and Daddy got married, it was considered a mixed marriage because he was from Brooklyn and she was from the Bronx. It took 2 hours to get from the Bronx to Brooklyn. Daddy moved to the Bronx to live with Mommy, Grace, and her mother and sister, Auntie Helen. They were waiting for Daddy to get drafted into World War II. And they all lived together in a 1-bedroom apartment on Teabot Avenue, not far from Fordham Road in the Grand Concourse, just a few blocks from the Paradise. What happened? The music stopped. The lights went out. Oh, it's intermission. Everybody is rushing to the concession stand. I have an idea. Let me take you on a 10-minute tour of the Paradise and the neighborhood. I'll be your tour guide today. I did a report on it. I already told you. Welcome to the Loews Paradise. Some people say Lowe's. The Loews Paradise opened on September 7th, 1929, featuring the movie The Mysterious Dr. Fu Manchu and the world-renowned musician Harold Arben played the Paradise's wonder organ. Come on, let's go outside. I want to show you the neighborhood. Button up, it's cold. We're on the west side of the Grand Concourse, facing south, facing downtown. Just a block and a half south of Fordham Road and the Grand Concourse, the main shopping district in the Bronx. Big sign, uptown, it's Alexander's. Clothing stores, men's stores, women's stores, children's stores, jewelry stores, shoe stores, electronics, records, restaurants, ice cream parlors. Let's go across the concourse. I want to show you Crumbs. Crumbs, spelled K-R-U-M''S. To get to Crumbs, we have to cross the concourse. It's a 4-lane street with 2 islands in the middle. So it's 2 lanes going south and 2 lanes going north. Look, we have the light. Let's run. Come on, come on, come on. Keep running. The light's changing. Oh, We made it. Everyone here? All right, let's go. Now, here's the entrance to Crumbs. Look at the fancy chocolates, candies, nuts, all kinds of stuff. It smells like brownies baking. Let me peek inside, see if Maxine's here.
In the ice cream parlor.
No, she's not here. Let's go up to Fordham Road in the Grand Concourse and take a look. Maybe we'll find her there. Flashing neon lights light a mini Times Square. Movie theaters. Lots of movie theaters. Look, down the block on Valentine and Fordham is the Valentine Theater. I wonder what they're showing. Ah, West Side Story. They show West Side Story here all the time. I saw West Side Story at least 15 times with my friends. I know every line. When that switchblade flashes the screen, we're transported into the rumble. It's us, Bronx kids. Everyone laughs when Tony is dying, after Chino shoots him, after Tony accidentally kills Bernardo, and Natalie Wood as Maria comes running out and she sings, "There's a place for us while he's dying." It doesn't make any sense. If that was Maxine, my sister, and her boyfriend Vinny got shot at a gang war, she wouldn't be crying. She would be screaming and crying. Across the street from the Valentine is the RKO Fordham. I saw South Pacific here the day Maxine graduated from high school. She's 17. I'm 10. We get all dressed up. Daddy even gets off from work. We're so proud of her. She's beautiful, all grown, and she even has a job in Manhattan. We go out for Chinese. Then we go to St. James Park and take pictures on Maxine's Brownie camera in the park. It's June. The flowers are blooming. The birds are chirping. It's summer. And then we go to the RK Fordham to see South Pacific. Wow. I'm Bali Hyde. I saw Rebel Without a Cause here too, with Maxine and Daddy. I was about 8. James Dean's red jacket. We're racing toward the edge of the cliff. Then James Dean jumps. Before the car went over the cliff. The other guy didn't make it. He dies. Most of the scary movies play here too. Edgar Allan Poe, The Fall of the House of Usher. I saw Psycho. Oh my God, look! The birds! Is the coast clear? Come on, we better go back to the Paradise before the feature starts again. Oh, wait. I want to show you one more place. The Lido Theater. Here's where I go with my parents, to the Lido. It's a few blocks down toward Jerome. And it's a small little theater. It's just two It's just two rows of seats. It's hard to remember. On the left side, there's about 10 or 12 seats, and that's the smoking section. And then there's an aisle. And then on the right side, there's another 12 seats, and that's the non-smoking section. I go here with Mommy and Daddy. We see grown-up pictures here. Mommy and Daddy like this space because they show a good double feature, and it's cheaper than the RKO or the Paradise. I saw Suddenly Last Summer here with Mommy and Daddy. Elizabeth Taylor is in a mental hospital, and Katharine Hepburn, her aunt, wants to give her a lobotomy, cut part of her brain out. Elizabeth Taylor's nuts because she saw what happened to her cousin Sebastian, Katharine Hepburn's son. Elizabeth Taylor knows why Sebastian was killed in a remote village in a remote part of the world while they were on vacation, even though she's so freaked out she can't remember it. What did Elizabeth Taylor know about Sebastian that Katharine Hepburn is afraid for people to find out about? Ma? It's a crazy movie. I don't understand it either. Doesn't make any sense. My father is angry with my mother because she chose the movie. Oh. And then there's advise and consent. The senator is afraid. He's being blackmailed because someone has a picture of him kissing another man while he was stationed in the army in Hawaii. I asked my mother, men kissing men is disgusting. You just don't do it. It would ruin your life. The senator has to kill himself. Real grown-up stuff. I can't wait to date. I like chicks like my sister, Natalie Wood with blonde hair. Oh, and Marilyn Monroe. Some like it hot. Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon dress up like chicks in the movie because they're hiding from the mob. Because they're witnesses to a hit back in Chicago. So they dress up like chicks, and they're musicians, so they join a girls' band to get out of town. In the end, Jack Lemmon, in his chick clothes, gets engaged to another man, Joey Brown. And when Jack Lemmon finally tells Joey Brown that he's really a man, Joey Brown says, "Nobody's perfect." Isn't that silly? Men can't get married. Come on, we better go back to the Paradise. Look at the sign in big, bold letters. The Loew's Paradise Theater. And theater is spelled Theatre. Come on, let's go inside. No, don't worry about buying tickets. We can pass right through. We're just dreaming. Wow. The majesty. Plush red carpet, wood panel rising 4 stories high. Takes your breath away. The smell of buttered popcorn, the sound of hot dogs grilling at the central concession stand. Ah, here's a statue of the famous Paradise Fountain. On the top of the fountain is a dolphin, and a naked child is riding the back of the dolphin. Water falls out and empties into a central collection pool that's stocked with giant goldfish. When I was a little boy, I wanted to go fishing in the pond. My father wouldn't let me. Now, come on. Follow me up the grandstand case, 2 stories up to the balcony promenade. The bathrooms are over there. Come here. I want you to get a close look at the coves on the ceiling from the balcony. In the cove directly above us, there are bare-chested women, strong, muscular, like the Statue of Liberty, and Roman soldiers and gladiators, and they're all playing musical instruments. This mural, the historian tells us, represents the ancient mythological gods of sound. And in the other cove, all the way across on the ceiling, those paintings represent the mythical, anthropological gods of light. And the largest central cove right in the center represents the newest of the gods of film. Sound and light unite. And we have feelings. Take a look at the people down below. Oh, look, they're running into the auditorium. The movie's about to begin. Let's sneak into the auditorium. Shh. We don't want to disturb the people who are making out. Wow. We're transported into a garden courtyard of an Italian palace. Hanging vines and statues line the wall. And everything is silhouetted in a dark blue sky. I'm sitting in the balcony in the smoking section. Yeah, I smoke. You got a problem with that? The movie's about to begin. The lights fade. Pink clouds pass in a sky filled with stars. Bird statues ready to take off. I have a great view of the screen as it illuminates, and right there, I see Daddy and 7-year-old Maxine projected on the screen. They're on the New York City subway, and they're going from the Bronx to Brooklyn to visit Grandma Brooklyn. The subway car has straw-woven seats and overhead fans, and the windows go up and down like apartment windows. Little Maxine has a baby doll on her lap. Her eyes follow a strange man who's walking through the subway car with his hat held out. He's dirty and he smells bad. Daddy's reading the sports section of the paper and making notes with a pencil. Daddy, give that man some money. He's very sad. Daddy looks up and he sees the strange man, and he gets between the man and Maxine, and he says, Maxine,
Would you rather have a baby brother or a baby sister? And Maxine's eyes widen and she inhales, and blood rushes to her cheeks, and she says, I want a baby sister. Or a baby brother. Daddy picks Maxine up and kisses her on the cheek and carries her as they exit the train. Then Daddy puts Maxine down on the platform and they walk hand in hand to Grandma Brooklyn's. Well, meet me, baby, down on 45th Street. Bum shoo bum ba bum bum shoo bum. Where the peppermint twisters meet. Bum shoo bum ba bum bum shoo bum. And you'll learn to do this. The peppermint twist. Thank you very much.
Yay! Yay!
Hey. Yeah.
Yay!
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I have a message that says I cannot start my video because the host has stopped it.
Sorry, Hank, hang on.
Okay.
Okay, try again.
There we go. Okay. Human remains. Once my wife was stopped going through airport security and asked to open a blue velvet box she was carrying in her purse. What are those? The guy asks. My husband's teeth, she answers. He waves it through as quickly as he can. They were my baby teeth that my parents saved in a blue velvet box. After her gallbladder was removed, my mother came home from the hospital with her gallstones in a small glass jar. As a kid, I'm fascinated by them. It's amazing that these pebbles were once inside my mother, and now they're sitting on her dressing table, and I, who was also once inside my mother, am looking at them. Human remains. As a kid, I read a lot about archaeology, kid archaeology, mummies, pyramids. In my bedroom, there was a slit in the back of a bookshelf that led to a mysterious space behind. I discover I can slip thin bits of paper through it. I once wrote a note, letter to future archaeologists. My name is Hank Greenspan. I live at 34 Cooper Road in White Plains, New York. I really hope you find this. Here, it is 1958. I didn't know if AD would mean anything. I put my message to future archaeologists in the slit. I hear it fall downward between the studs to an imagined moment in which it and I are discovered. I often look for arrowheads. Once I actually found one on an island on Lower Saranac Lake in the Adirondacks. Doing the math, I realized years later that Lower Saranac is where I would have been conceived. When I found the arrowhead, of course, I didn't know that. I'm just thrilled to hold something that was held by someone else, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of years before, maybe more. It was in his hands I assumed it was a hymn, and now it is in mine. Human remains. Years ago, I had a lovely kid at my seminar on the Holocaust. She was smart, but her writing tended to go tangential. Usually she caught herself. I'm reading one of her swervy essays in our kitchen, and suddenly she catches herself and returns to the topic, and she writes, anyways, back to the Holocaust. I share it with my wife. Since then, over 20 years, when my wife or I suddenly change topics, we say, anyways, back to the Holocaust. 3 of my grandparents died before I was born. My father's mother lived until I was 4.5. I remember her apartment in New York's Upper West Side. I remember naps in a bed with a specific grandmotherly smell. After she died, my parents told me that her last words were, how's Hank? I have no idea if that's true. I hope it is. Henry Crystal, an Auschwitz survivor and a teacher of mine, once told me, part of what helped me survive was that I knew my mother loved me. Human remains. I understand that T.S. Eliot was an anti-Semite, although there's apparently some debate. Either way, like many, I'm drawn to this line from The Wasteland. These fragments I have shored against my ruins. These fragments I have shored against my ruins. Fragments, ruins. I know a Holocaust survivor who endured Lodz Ghetto and Auschwitz. Reuben owned a small electric parts store in what we used to call inner city Detroit. He tells me that he could have moved his store after the 1967 Detroit riots or rebellion, but he stayed. I could have moved out years back. Sometimes I just feel, I don't know. It reminds me sometimes like the buildings, all boarded up. Sometimes it reminds me like the ghetto from the riots in the city. They never did nothing to it after that. Everything is boarded up and ruined. It's a lot like in the ghetto in Lodz. After 67, only a few customers came. Reuben spent most of each day alone in his store, dreaming back, he said, to pre-war Jewish Lodz. He even imagined writing a novel, not about the Holocaust, but about the whole life, the whole life, the whole life before the Holocaust, with the Holocaust included. Reuben never wrote the novel. I think he lived it, finding a ghetto that reminded him of that ghetto, choosing not to leave, shoring fragments from a whole life, unpublished and unpublic. It was a kind of dream. Agi Reuben, also an Auschwitz survivor, found a photo of a favorite cousin in her mother's jacket in a pile of clothes from those already gassed. She hid the photo in her shoe and kept it until liberation. By then, it was only white powder. Human remains. Agi also had a recurring dream in Auschwitz. She's a child cradled in her mother's lap. But the fence, the barbed wire is there, and it always ends with that. The good sheltered feeling is temporary. It's very minor. That's how far you could go, even in a dream. After my sister Carol died at 52, My wife and I traveled to Boston to make arrangements. We picked out a gravesite. I could pretty much choose any plot in the new cemetery. And so my wife and I walk around talking about the advantages of the view that Carol would have, keeping in mind her horizontal plane from this spot versus that one. View is important. Almost always we imagined it is for them rather than for us. It is a way of shoring memories and care. Human remains. Baby teeth, gallstones, fragments of a photograph, fragments of a dream, a single plot chosen at twilight. These are small things compared with monuments, memorials, museums. I've come to believe that grief is a piecemeal business, tangible, specific. We can grieve a single person we love and for whom we carefully choose a grave. But I don't think we can grieve the whole life of a people, mostly without graves, and for us, mostly without names. Agi once told me that a friend of hers, another survivor, asked if she could visit Agi's father's grave as a place to grieve her own father, lost in the flames. Agi's father survived the war, so there was an actual grave. A friend said that she'd asked her rabbi, who said it was okay. Agi said, of course it's okay. Human remains. I was with Agi when the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum opened in '93. It was a cold, wet, brutally windy day. And the mall stretching out behind the new museum was a field of mud. Agi remembers. For years, I saw my mother floating in the air and the smoke and the wind, and I couldn't reach her. I couldn't bring her down. We want to feel that our dead are somewhere, and what happened to them is somewhere, not simply erased. We want to believe that the museum is a place to remember, even a grave, even a cemetery. I must tell you that this is improvisation. This is pretending, and we know it. We want to believe it, even as we are reminded that it is cold and it is raining and the wind still blows. We can improvise. We can borrow one grave to stand for another. We can borrow a ghetto in Detroit to stand for the obliterated ghetto of Lodz. We can borrow a museum to stand for cemeteries that exist nowhere. But there are limits. That's as far as you can go, even in a dream. Agi's mother improvised during the first moments of their arrival in Auschwitz. Agi was sent to one side, her mother and little brother to the other. Agi ran over to be with them, but the SS shoved her back, pushing her to the ground. Her mother sees this happening, even as her own line is led away. Go, my child, go. We will see each other tomorrow. Agi says, and I've been going ever since then. Human remains. These days, there's endless talk about survivors' legacies. which almost always means their testimony about what they witnessed and endured. At the opening of the first World Gathering of Survivors, held in Jerusalem in 81, a television commentator announced, "These heroic people who are gathered here today have not come to resurrect the nightmares of the past. They have not come to mourn. They have come to celebrate life, to bear witness, and to pass it on to their children and their children's children. This is more valuable than all the material assets they could pass on. This is their true legacy." Monumental stuff. But we could wonder, what can it mean to bear witness without mourning and without resurrecting the nightmares of the past? To what then? To what is one bearing witness? Maybe this is the commentator's testimony to the idea of heroic people. Testimony to the idea of testimony itself. Or generally, simply well-intended rhetoric, mostly out of touch with survivors' actual lives. Agi was an actual life kind of person, which is part of why I loved her. In one of our conversations, she reflected, "What is that word they always use? That word. Legacy. Legacy. What is my legacy?" We who were there know how limited can be any parent's ability to prepare the younger generation for what can happen. But then I think of my own parents, the legacy I myself received, and I realize it is made up of small things that turned out to be precious to me. Things I gathered up as much because I needed them as because my parents wanted me to have them. I barely remember my mother's face, but I somehow remember her principles, certain ways one tries to live one's life. My father, who survived, was with me through much more of my life. It was a full, mature relationship. And yet, when I think of him, I remember certain moments. I remember the way he sang Ein Kelohenu, one of our Jewish prayers. Whenever I'm at the synagogue, I hear his voice at certain prayers or hymns. I remember how much joy he got out of singing that particular one. And when he comes up, he is again with me, and I am singing with him. It is the harmony of voices that makes the legacy. The way I tune myself to him and feel his spirit singing through my own voice. Even now, we are singing together. So, actually, what is a legacy? It's these small things that are taken up by those who follow. I can provide whatever I provide, but in the end, my legacy is not up to me. It is up to whoever comes after to pick up this bit, remember that part, find harmony with whatever note, as it may apply to their own circumstances, which I know will be different from mine. You will take what you choose, what you need, just as I did. I can only wish you well and wish you peace. So one last time, I remember my mother's voice, and I repeat what she said to me as she looked across the mud and the agony, trying to get my attention, trying to imagine a future, trying to invoke hope, trying to bestow the only blessing that in the end this world allows. Go, my child, go. Go, my beloved children and grandchildren. Go, my dear comrades and friends. Go, my kind listeners. Go.
Hey, hey.
September 19th, I embark on a solo adventure to Santa Fe and Lake Superior. I am beyond eager to be on my way with a small fraction of my wardrobe, one new journal, and one book of essays. And I want to slam the door on this masso confuso that is scattered all across my house, stacks of books waiting to be sorted, family history files, sitting there calling me to write more stories about the history, and baskets of unsorted photos crying to meet up with albums. Not one little piece of any of this goes out the door with me. September 20th, I'm in Santa Fe, and I go first to Museum Hill, to my very favorite museum, the Wheelwright. The exhibit currently is 50 years of modern Native American painters. All of the paintings are large, nothing smaller than 3x3, 3x4, and there's bold brushstrokes on every painting and vibrant, juicy colors, and anger is oozing from the canvases, anger at the white dominant narrative. And most of them have images of America, flags upside down, eagles going awry, Statue of Liberty, anger at the 200 years of devastation and murder. There are also sculptures in this exhibit, and the one that calls to me is taller than my 6 feet, made of wood, carved of wood, and it's called Man and Owl in Conversation. There is an owl very close in front of the man's face, and the owl's features are very clearly carved, while the man's features are much more general, unclear. It's obvious that the owl has the most important things to say in this conversation. The next room is smaller and more like a big closet, and all over the walls are images of young Native Americans, most in their 20s, it looks like, of all genders, and they're in these poses they look as if they're in movement, and they're all dressed in contemporary clothes. And across the heads of each one of them, it says, "Pose with me, pose with me." An obvious tongue-in-cheek replay of what I remember in the 50s, when you could go to Disneyland or Grand Canyon and pose with an Indian, dressed the way the dominant white culture thought they should be dressed, with headdress and fringed leggings and big, tall moccasins. It's obvious that these take a photo young natives are posing it their way. As I go to exit the museum, I walk past the Man and the Owl sculpture again, and I sit looking up at the owl. I wish he would have a conversation with me. I exit and go next to the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture. Big, bold label across the door, Indian. from all that I have studied about the genocidal Indian boarding schools, I have decided that I will use only the term Native American. But here in this prominent museum, they are saying Indian. Obviously, they know something that I need to learn. The current exhibit is We Are Still Here, showcasing the work, multimedia artwork of many young artists. My favorite is a weaving called Think for Yourself. And it's a patchwork of beautiful images, traditional and modern. Before I leave, I watch the video, the exhibit video that gives each of the artists a chance to tell the story of their work, and each one ends with the same words. We have always been here, we are here now, and we always will be here. They are obviously thinking for themselves. And just like those natives in the Pose With Me exhibit at the Wheelwright, these young artists are taking that word Indian on their own terms. I leave Santa Fe several days later to fly to Minneapolis. I rent a car and drive north to Lake Superior, or Gitchigami, as the natives call it. And I go toward the homeland of the Ojibwe and the Dakota. I go to the Grand Portage Museum, about 30 miles south of the Canadian border, where I learn about the 1700s fur trade between the Europeans, who were beginning to invade, and the Ojibwe, who were hunting by truce on the Dakota land. And it worked to the benefit of everyone for quite a while, actually, until there were so many Europeans coming in that, of course, they drowned the native culture. October 6th, my adventure is over, and I come home. I drive down my driveway and see golden red fronds on all the roofs, the house, the garage, and on the ground. I walk from the garage to my front door. Fall makes me sad. But when I open my front door, I am even sadder. I look at all these piles, and it seems like, my God, I say, have these papers been copulating while I was gone? There weren't this many when I left. And I take my suitcase and walk down the hallway, and here's the same thing's been going on in other rooms in the house. And everywhere I hear the voice, sort me first, attend to me first. I find my toothbrush and a fresh nightgown, and I go to bed. The next morning, the next morning, I wake to the news that Hamas has attacked Israel. I know exactly what will happen when Israel and the United States retaliate. War and more war. I am sick to my stomach, and my coffee tastes bitter. I sink into my large writing chair with its 180-degree view of the redwoods surrounding my house, a view that usually comforts me, but nothing comforts this morning. Not anything, and nothing looks important enough to be done. I sit until maybe noon, running out of coffee. I decide I should clear the phone machine, and I hear the voice of my high school friend in Santa Fe, returning my call when I called to tell her that I would be coming to Santa Fe. Oh, Nancy, this is so exciting. I will welcome you. It will be so welcome. I don't even have words for it. I tear up. Our visit was in happier days. And I want again to be able to stand at the door of my hotel and watch Sydney coming across the patio and yell out, "Oh, Sydney, I'd know you anywhere in the world." How wonderful to remember our teen years in a good way. I'd like to be back there for more conversations with Sydney. I'd like to be back on the shores of Lake Gichigami and not in this current mad world or in this chaos around me. I want to stay immobile in this chair and watch the fronds of the redwoods around me falling. I take the advice, however, of a friend, a writing friend, who tells me that I should go out and talk to those trees. So one day, when I finally have to take the compost out, I do. And I notice something new. They're coming out of an old stump are these redwood shoots that I've never seen before, new life. And I look up at the trees and I hear them, I do hear. We stand in community, even though we're diverse. Yes, most of us are redwoods, but there's pine oak, pine, tan oak, and fir among us, and we do not war. You humans would be fighting over who was the tallest, who was the richest, who was the smartest, but that is not our way. You do, and you would discard that worthless stump without any thought of what it could sprout. And you humans do cut our best and our tallest trees, but we do not go immobile. We do not sit in our chairs and fret. We know that we cannot control the life force, as you humans seem to think that you can. We only know that it is our sacred mission to keep exhaling oxygen so you can survive and to keep sending out shoots for new life. And we don't expect it to be perfect, but it's what our mission is. The day after this conversation with the trees, I have to go on an errand out of town. When I return at dusk on my narrow two-laned road, there in the middle of my lane is a brown owl standing tall and stolid. Luckily, there's no one coming, so I can swerve to avoid hitting her. But I keep screaming as I'm driving on, please get out of the road. There's a car coming. Go out. I don't want you to get hurt. I even think of turning around, but I know full well that owl does not want to deal with me. The minute I get home, I Google owl, and I learn that it's very rare to see an owl in that way, and that it's a good omen of fortune on your road ahead that will help you with what is ahead. I also learned, I did not know, that owls are incredibly flexible with their neck, that they can turn 270 degrees. I'm thinking maybe if there's some truth to this transformation possibility, maybe I will be able to loosen my neck a little bit. Several days after meeting the owl, two of my dogs, my deceased dogs, come to me in a dream. They're running and we hug each other. And I feel like Floyd has to be around. I'm looking for him, but I don't see him, but I do see his truck. And I go and I look through the papers that he always has on his front seat, because I've left him a note about some transaction that we have, financial transaction we have to make. And there, written across my paper, is Floyd's clear writing, 1679 and no more. That's all we'll spend. His neck wasn't real flexible either. I wake and I do not want to get out of bed. It feels like Floyd is here and my girls are here and I don't want to get up. I keep thinking they're here, but of course they're not. And eventually I need to get up, I make some coffee, I take it to my composting chair, and all I can think is to look up the year, 1679. That number is so specific, and I'm shocked. Always I'm shocked at the incredible wisdom of the dream voice. 1679 was the year that the Ojibwe and the Dakota forged their truce. that led to all that successful hunting I read about at Grand Portage. Wouldn't I like, by the way, to tell some of the world leaders about that idea of a truce, a quid pro quo. You hunt well, I'll give you the land for hunting. We'll work together and we'll live. But of course, the arms dealers wouldn't like that. So I'm not going to waste my time with that. Better to come inside myself. Where do I need to call a truce? A truce that would be forged with the help of a flexible, clear-eyed owl. A forge, a truce between that savior part of me that insists that I could save the world if I only worked a little bit harder, and that slave driver part of me that is demanding that I sort my entire life into neat files. I want to call a truce. I want to call it, and I want to be able to rise now from these mulching fall leaves, dry myself off, and move slowly and happily into the winter of my life.
Start my video. Listen to me. Listen to me. I am the teacher and you have to listen. I'm on the front porch, about 6 or 7 years old, and I'm forcing the neighborhood kids to play Sunday school again. This bracelet gives us everything we need to ask Jesus into our hearts. The yellow bead reminds us of heaven because gold is yellow, and there's lots of gold in heaven, and heaven is God's home. God loves us, and he wants us to be with him. As someone who was raised within fundamentalist Christianity, I played Sunday school a lot. I was taught to convince, not connect from a very young age. Growing up, I was actually told explicitly that nothing I was experiencing around me was strictly real or mattered in any tangible way. Friends, prospective career goals, the rainforest. I was in this world, but I wasn't really of this world because my home was somewhere else. We were all about heaven. So we didn't really need to take care of the earth because we weren't planning to be here for very long. This world, it's basically a shitty short-term rental where you don't care if your kids draw on the walls. We were taught to be just obsessed, single-minded about the afterlife, both individually and collectively, which functionally makes the fundamentalist Christians the real nihilists, but we could talk about that another day. I was tasked in childhood with ensuring the eternal salvation of everyone I came into contact with, and I was all about sharing the good news. But the black bead reminds us of our sins. Sins are the things we do that make God unhappy. Telling lies and disobeying our parents are two examples of sins. Because of our sins, we are no longer clean, and we cannot go be with God. There was this guy, Frank Peretti, back in the 90s. He wrote these pulpy fantasy novels about angels and demons, this present darkness, piercing the darkness. They were really popular when I was a kid. One of them was about a child being possessed by a demonic horse spirit because she did yoga or her counselor hypnotized her or something. My mom read them. I read them. They were everywhere. They were great. The demons smelled like sulfur, and the angels had these big swords, and they were fighting over a small town newspaper, if I remember right, because the newspaper was the tip of the spear for a larger demonic invasion. Sounds cool, right? The only trouble was it wasn't really a novel to us. We actually prayed for the gift of discernment so we could really see and feel these supernatural entities. We did warfare against them, against the powers and the principalities, the invisible forces that we believed controlled our region. I was taught that I could defeat the devil himself if I prayed enough and believed enough. I saw him up in the corner. Oh, he had tusks and a snout like a pig. My dad describing an apparition he saw in my little brother's room. I felt it in the computer, and I had this sense of evil that I had never felt before, so I turned it off and I never went back. My mom describing why she quit playing video games in the late 80s. I saw her in the kitchen. She had a weird backward hat and a tie-dye shirt and these weird round glasses, and her hair was all pulled back. Me, describing the entity I saw enter my uncle's house before Thanksgiving dinner. My parents laughed at me on the way home. Stacy, that wasn't a demon. That was a lesbian. That was Libby's sister, Jen. She's just a lesbian, sweetheart. I was confused. Lesbians are dangerous too, right? That's what they're always talking about. Why are they laughing? Why is this funny? This is serious stuff. And it was so serious because we were taught that our loved ones, our church, and the body of Christ in general was under constant attack by the devil. So in response to this attack, we were taught to speak in tongues, to anoint people with oil, and to proselytize. Evangelism was super important to us. There were hordes of teenagers packed into buses, shipped off into public spaces, both in real life and on AOL Instant Messenger. And we were armed with the Romans Road and a spreadsheet for overcoming objections broken down by our opponent's religion and by topic. And yes, I said opponents just then. There wasn't a whole lot of room to get to know people as, people with their own motivations and desires and fears. They were just souls to be saved, and I would be damned if any of them went to hell on my watch. The Romans Road, it was this pathway away from hell, basically an updated version of the witnessing bracelets that we'd make in Sunday school. It's a list of 5 verses from the Apostle Paul's letter to the Roman Church. It starts with Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And it ends with the reassurance in Romans 10:9 that if we confess with our mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in our heart that God raised him from the dead, we would be saved. I memorized the verses multiple times. We had them on tracts, we had them on t-shirts. I even think I had them on a water bottle at one point. And the goal was to be able to walk someone through these steps, to pray with them, to walk them down the road, because the prayer is also crafted after these verses. And then suddenly you have a life transformed. It felt like an academic exercise sometimes. I remember reciting the verses for points in this knockoff version of Girl Scouts we had. It was called the Missionettes. But it was a script. And if this neurodivergent theater kid loves anything, it's a script. I kept it in my back pocket, ready to witness, and occasionally pulling it out to reassure myself that I was actually still saved. But our mission field, it was the backyard. Our friends, our families, the lesbian auntie, I remember choir tours to San Francisco, which seemed so far away from suburban Sacramento. Now, folks, we are not at home anymore. The choir director was on the PA of the tour bus trying to prep us for the horrors of the big city. You may see boys holding hands with other boys, and we are going to be nice to them because you may be the only face of Jesus that they see today. I had this secret friend in choir. It's actually not as exciting as it sounds. We were assigned a secret buddy, and I got a little piece of paper describing what flavor of ice cream he was into and what TV shows he liked. And I was supposed to get him little odds and ends throughout the course of the semester. But I didn't. I forgot for months. Every week, I resolved to get him something small. And every week, 4:30 on Sunday would roll around and I would show up to the choir loft empty-handed. Finally, in May, at the very last moment possible, I got him, Shane was his name. I got Shane something small while we were on choir tour in San Francisco because better late than never, right? Jesus loves you, we yelled on Alcatraz. Jesus loves you, we shouted in Union Square. Jesus loves you, we screamed at people on Fisherman's Wharf. I think it was a little chocolate cable car, the thing I bought for Shane. But then even though I remembered to buy him something, I then forgot to give it to him. Classic ADHD. Even when we complete the assignment, we forget to turn it in. So when we were supposed to reveal ourselves to our secret buddies by giving them their communion after the last service before we headed home, I just didn't. I don't remember if I drank his little juice and ate his little cracker, or if I just left them in a planter or something to destroy the evidence. But we just loaded up the bus, and I thought I got away with it. Folks, I just need to share something with you. There's somebody on this bus who did not reveal themselves to their secret pal. It's the director again. He's standing with Shane at the front of the bus. I lose sensation in my arms and my legs. So we're just going to give them a minute to come up here and have a little chat with Shane. 15 minutes pass. Shane's waiting at the front of the bus. Everybody else is sitting down, and the chocolate cable car is rapidly melting in my pocket. Everything feels slow. Do they know? Did they keep track of the assignments, or did they just hand out the papers? Okay, guys, we're going to get off the bus for a few. If this is you, you can just come tell any adult. It's okay if you're embarrassed. You're not in trouble. I get off the bus and I say nothing. And the shame is absolutely overwhelming. And I don't know how long it took for them to eventually give up, load us back onto the bus for the next stop, but it felt like an eternity. Is this what hell really feels like? The funny thing is, it took me 20 years to even consider what that experience was like for Shane. He was saved, right? So I didn't need to worry about him. objectify people or something, am I right? Oh, the funny thing is, as much time as I spent witnessing to people or training to witness to people, I don't remember if I even saved a single person. Now, this part is really important. We can play hide and seek after. Right now, we are hiding the word of the Lord in our hearts. And our hearts are dirty because of our sin. We cannot make our own hearts clean, but that's okay because the red bead reminds us of the blood of Jesus. His blood is the only thing that can make us clean. He died on the cross to take the punishment we deserved for our sins. And on the third day, Jesus became alive again. That's Easter. So it's safe to say my childhood was imbued with this sense of responsibility and just a little layer of potent magical thinking on top, like these delicious little delusion sprinkles. So yeah, individually we had to worry about dying and going to hell ourselves, or being responsible for somebody else going to hell because we were too chicken shit to witness to them. Collectively, we had to worry about the rapture, which was definitely real and definitely imminent, and whether or not the 7-year period of tribulation prophesied in the Revelations would occur before, during, or after Jesus came down on a cloud and beamed up the believers, hopefully leaving everybody else behind to suffer the seals of justice and the scary horses or whatever. Mom? Mom? Mom, where are you? Left Behind, another popular Christian fantasy series. Do I actually have an anxious attachment style, or did I just grow up terrified that one day I'd be hugging my mommy and she would just disappear out of my arms because somehow I wasn't a real Christian? The answer is yes. I'm in the kitchen, sweetheart! The white bead reminds us that because Jesus took the punishment for our sins, our hearts can be clean. We just have to ask him. Don't leave. We are playing. Where are you going? So either through personal perishment or through collective yeeting into the sky, the apocalypse was coming, and it was my job to be ready. It was also my job to make sure everyone else was ready, whether they liked it or not. Not a lot of room for autonomy, growth, or discovery in the end times, folks. We need to focus. Don't leave. Please don't go. So now I find myself a 40-year-old atheist on a journey of healing and self discovery and learning to celebrate the wonder of being alive. I have this hunger for the genuine connections I missed out on for all those years, and it's starting to happen. It's painful and it's beautiful and it's terrifying. But it's all happening against the backdrop of a slow motion, scientifically validated apocalypse that appears by multiple measures to be accelerating. And the healthy part of me, the healing part of me, knows that I can't control any of this. I know I need to focus on making the most out of this one wild and precious life Mary Oliver gave me, and do my best to raise our daughter to have a healthy sense of wonder while simultaneously preparing her for a future that is very different from anything her father and I could have imagined for her even 5 years ago. The healthy part of me knows I need to pick a few causes to channel this passion into, because I know I can make a difference in some small way. Just feeling bad about everything isn't fixing anything, but I can plant a tree and I can add to the historical record of how all this is going down. But I do believe that it's all going down. And my trauma brain, my kid brain, my witnessing brain, oh, she's ready. She wants to save you, whether you like it or not. I don't know how to stop proselytizing, even though I changed teams. So I am personally going to save you from COVID. I'm going to save you from cancer. I'm going to save you from fascism, from genocide. I'm going to save you from white supremacy, from capitalism, from the kyriarchy, from bigotry, from the climate collapse, from suicidal ideation, both passive and active, from grief, depression, loneliness, and or discomfort of any kind. I will save you. Now, I know how that all sounds. You may be thinking, for an atheist, this girl has a really unhealthy Messiah complex, which I see how you got there. I really do. But I think it's more of a Noah complex, or more specifically, a Noah's Ark complex. I just want to be a big, beautiful boat. I want to be constructed out of gopher wood, and I want to be so sturdy and so safe, so buoyant, that I will be able to collect every single person, animal, insect, and plant I have ever met and take them deep into my belly. And I want to keep them there and love them until the storm has passed. Love you until the storm has passed. Maybe there'll be a rainbow or something. Now, there is, of course, a less charitable version of this. And in the less charitable version, I'm nothing but a stressed out mother hamster. And do you know what mama hamsters do when they're worried about something? They protect their babies. They take them back into their bodies via the mouth. So I will consume every last one of you until I believe that the threat has passed. Let me protect you. Let me protect you. Please don't leave. Here's the thing. What if I eat everyone because I'm scared? And then the world doesn't actually end. And then I'm alone. That would make me the flood, not the boat, right? If I just ate everything. You don't need me. We need each other, but I don't know how to do that. And what if I let my fear of the end rob every moment here of pleasure and presence? Because life is its own apocalypse. It always has been. Rapture or no, climate disaster or no, the world is always ending for someone, and it's just the means that change. And the magnitude. And we just have to love each other through it. But that's the one thing that I was never really taught how to do. To receive a love that doesn't save. To give love that doesn't convince. Because love doesn't dominate. Love doesn't consume. And love definitely doesn't hide on the back of the bus.
I'm home for the holidays. It's a late night after some drinks and the emotions start flowing. Wasn't there enough for you in Boston? I should have been there for you. My brother starts breaking down, his head in my lap, gasping for air through tears, and I'm staring down at him like he's a wounded animal. I don't really feel anything. Okay, act cool. Don't make him feel worse about this. He looks fucking pathetic. Also, he's had the chance to be there for you all along. Clearly, this has been eating at him. It's so hard to see how much your relationship pains him too. I'm hearing that you're not used to men being vulnerable like this. unless there's alcohol involved. It's almost repulsive for you to see men be unguarded and fall apart, though you also want them to be closer to you, to open up to you. Growing up, the front door of our house opened up into the living room, and to the right of the living room was my brother's room. So when the Northridge earthquake hit in 1994, I was 3 and he would have been 9. Apparently, he remembers my mom coming in to check on me first because I'm the baby, because she's my biological mom and his stepmom. Of course your mom would check on you. Don't let this feed into the whole I'm spoiled narrative. You're not responsible for adult actions or your brother's memories of these events. It sounds to me like your brother likes to hold on to grudges and brings them up in adulthood. And I wonder how many he's racked up. Yeah, and how many he'll continue to use against you. I remember fragments. Playing dress up. Mom singing me to sleep. She made a joint birthday cake for my brother and I one year. And Bubba's side was chocolate frosting with vanilla spider webs to match the Spider-Man figurine on top of the cake. And mine was vanilla frosting with brown leaves drawn on, surrounding a Pocahontas nightlight. Light and dark, cream and brown. And then, so I was 5 and he would have been 11 when we moved to La Crescenta. He'd been going to a charter school farther away, closer to where his mom lived. We have same dad, but different moms. And my mom would walk me to school every morning. I truly couldn't tell you how my brother got to school. And why don't you remember what he was up to? We're 5 years old. It makes sense you don't remember. And when your nervous system is overloaded, your mind makes certain events fuzzy or non-existent. So as you're taking this deeper dive into your psyche, the water is not so clear, it's actually really cloudy. I think your brain has repressed a lot. My earlier memories of my brother tend to slightly make fun of him or pin him as the bad guy. In middle school, he got in trouble for pulling down a girl's spaghetti strap in class. And so as punishment, my dad went to school with him and held his hand the whole day. Okay, right. So this is another reason to not get into any trouble. Learn from Bubba's mistakes. You don't want to be shamed by dad. And was your father actually thinking this would be an effective tactic? I don't know, it's kind of sweet. Your dad's this macho guy holding his son's hand. There's a tenderness to it. He's being with his son through the pains of middle school. Maybe your dad wasn't ready to let go of his firstborn. He just wanted to be able to protect him. You know what? I often wish I had a sister instead of you, Bubba. I'm fucking pissed at the ways you fucked me up and fucked up our family. And if you really cared, you would try harder. I remember one time my brother came out into the kitchen wearing my Little Mermaid costume, and it was this tail that you'd slip over your legs like a skirt and had a fin attached to the side. And then he put on my Princess Jasmine blue satin bra kind of top and had a bright red sweatshirt over his head like a wig. He even had a fork in hand like a dinglehopper for true character embodiment. He brought a smile to your face. He knew everyone would love this. His little sister gets the Disney princess costume she wants. And what if he wanted some acknowledgement too? Maybe he envied the sweetness you got as a girl, as the princess. Maybe once in a while, he just wanted to be treated like a little girl. And then there's the Big Tatanka, which I could never forget about. It was this piece of plywood that was about the size of a yardstick. And in his small and neat handwriting, my dad would mark the dates of when he used it to hit my brother. It's like the Mexican version of marking your kid's height on a wall, but instead of tracking growth, you're keeping score of all the ways they fucked up. Fear was beaten into me knowing that this thing existed. But it also didn't feel real because I was never hit with it. So was I spared because I was not only a girl, but a little light-skinned girl? My grandfather would beat my dad with his belt, and my dad was also beaten up by his 3 older brothers. Present day, I watch my brother spank his son, scolding, "I said don't do that!" Followed by his son's shrieks. You never got hit with the Big Tatanka because you were a goody little two-shoes. Well, yeah, you knew if you were bad, you got put on the Big Tatanka. That's why you vowed to never fall out of line, to be the good girl you were expected to be. You would have disappointed Dad so much if you made him hit you. If you're a good girl, then you'll be accepted and loved and out of harm's way. It makes sense your brother would resent you. Maybe he took this as you being a silent witness, complicit in this calculated beating. But you were a child. Well, so was your brother. It's like he took the brunt for both of you. Maybe he resigned to being the bad kid so you could succeed. And of course, this would impact his self-esteem, but it impacted you too. You were both typecast, you into the good, abiding, obeying child, and him, the child that pushes boundaries, wasn't afraid to take risks, who got to express his anger. But how about when you say I'm spoiled? When you judge my work as a therapist? When you tell me I'm not really Mexican, denying my sense of belonging in this family? You do not get let into my heart. We were just so different. I was happy and wore bright colors, watched cartoons, rode my Razor scooter. I played the flute and collected so many Beanie Babies. I was obsessed with Sanrio and cute little stationery. Bubba played video games and rode skateboard with his friends. He liked dark colors and he loved art and drawing. His hair was his form of creative self-expression, and every school year he had a different standout hairstyle. Bleached shoulder length, hair long enough to gel into spikes a few inches all around his head, mohawks of dyed red and blue and green. One time his whole head was just red spikes. And he really loved ceramics in high school. He was really talented. He idolized his teacher, and I know this helped solidify his identity as an artist. After my brother graduated, this teacher was caught secretly filming girls undressing in the changing rooms for his classes. This story really breaks my heart for your brother. This image of his idol shattered. How could this not turn his worldview upside down? How could it not fuck him up a little bit? By the time I was in 7th grade, my brother was starting junior college and walked down the hallway one day and he asked me, "Hey, do you want to sip?" And offers a small bottle of vodka in my direction. I mean, of course he's gonna drink. He's a teenager. You two were just operating in different worlds. This is his way of wanting to relate to you, of wanting to be the older, cool brother who will give you alcohol. Though this would be lost on someone who was so scared to disappoint her family. Maybe he saw you as rejecting his attempts to spend time with you. My therapist said it would be very reasonable for me to not have a relationship with you. Because if a boyfriend treated me the ways you have, I would have cut him out of my life a long ass time ago. God forbid we actually have a conversation while you're fucking sober. Not that you're actually gonna change. A few years after community college, my brother transferred to San Francisco State for ceramics. And when he came back, he brought cockroaches home with him. All his belongings were in these big white trash bags around the house. My parents bug bombed his bedroom. And in my head, there's this flash of a memory of him and my parents across from each other in the living room yelling at each other. And it's just like this family meeting I walked into. And why haven't you asked any of them about this? No one would want to talk about this again, and Bubba might get mad at you for dredging this up. I get that you don't want to make your relationship worse with him. It's so hard to stomach the built-up disappointments you have. This really crystallizes your own conflict avoidance, your patterns of not trusting men, of not being able to say how you really feel. Because a good girl doesn't make emotional waves or question things. And when you were emotional, you were seen as dramatic, sensitive, too much. You and your brother seem alike in this way. But you shut down your emotions and he lets them out. Yeah, we're both fucking insecure and fixated about how people perceive us. Well, you both have these parts of you that want attention, acceptance, and love, that want to be good enough, Mexican enough. And what if you both can have that? In college, my brother started coming around more, and in hindsight, it felt a little weird for a 27-year-old to want to party with his 21-year-old sister and her friends. Look, I just want to make sure you're having a good time and taking advantage of things, he told me. This one time, I got a call at work from my roommate. Lily, your brother's here. Bubba had woken her up. I didn't know he would be coming, and he sat in my apartment and waited until I got off work. What is he thinking? I'm hearing you fawn in response to your brother that it's hard to set boundaries and to be able to stick up for yourself. You were frustrated with him, and that's so fair. And he was also disappointed, wanting to connect with his sister the only way he knew how. After college, I remember getting a text message from him saying, "I fucking hate you, and I wish you were never born." And I fell apart. I felt worthless and so small. And I haven't been able to let go of that feeling since. I'm not only walking on eggshells around him, I'm tiptoeing on layers of fear and shattered trust. Why am I so desperately hanging on to this moment? Bubba, you've resented me my whole life for having intact parents. Well, you had to deal with your parents' fractured relationship. And I have empathy for you, but it only goes so far. But if I give you more compassion, does it take away from my own I'm trying to give myself? I went to Boston for my master's degree, and he never flew out to see me. I didn't think much of it until he didn't come to my graduation, and that hurt. Though I knew he couldn't afford it. But did I even invite him out? Soon after, I had my first real relationship, and I was broken up with right before my birthday. Hey, happy birthday! So, how's not Dan? I'm not okay. Look, I gotta go. Okay, well, happy birthday. How's not Dan? What a fucking dick. I don't think he really knew how hurt you were. He was just trying to genuinely check in. You two are speaking such different emotional languages, and they both translate to wanting more from one another. Bubba, I'd like to be able to forgive you. I love you, but I don't know how much I really like you. I just want us to be able to coexist in this family. I just want to feel like you accept me. And I think you need that from me too.
Yay.
My father would tell stories at dinner. He would say, "The bear went up the mountain to see what he could see." And we would, but he could never think of one other word to say. In 1968, when I was a teenager, we were having dinner. My sister, my mother, and my father were there, and my sister's husband, who had been drafted to be a professional football player and a professional basketball player, and had decided to be a big psychiatrist instead. My brother was there too, and he had been sent to some of the best schools in the world when we did not have money for a fancy college for me. But never mind. I wanted to go to Duke, and my mother said, "You will never need to work. You will be married. Be forewarned, if you do not send your child to Duke when she wants to go, she may end up on a stage telling some or all of your family secrets." Anyway, we were sitting at the dinner table, and my brother-in-law, the big psychiatrist, said, "I think it is sad that the police are hitting the protesters in Chicago." My father said, "You will not teach my daughter to disobey the police." My brother-in-law said, "Oh no, I was simply saying, I think it is sad that the police are hitting the protesters in Chicago." My mother stood, raised a finger, and said, "If you can't agree with Daddy, just leave the table." When I was 18, I wanted to go to a rock concert. I had been invited to go with the valedictorian of the class, who was my best friend. She was the daughter of the mayor, and they were Democrats. When the Klan called their house during desegregation, her mother would say, "Come ahead, bring a cross and burn it in the yard. We have invited everyone over to roast marshmallows." And for a while there, every time someone came in her front door, she showed them where the straightened coat hangers were in the front hall closet with the marshmallows. Anyway, I said, "What circumstances, Diddy, could I go to the rock concert?" Everybody in the house called him Daddy until the day he died, including my mother. I used to think that was really sick, but now I call myself Mommy to the dogs. Of course, I called their father, my soon-to-be ex-husband, Daddy. To really sick it up, I sometimes called myself Mommy when talking to my soon-to-be ex-husband. Now, Mommy told you that does not make Mommy happy. Doesn't Mommy? It would make Mommy happy. Anyway, back to the rock concert. My father said, "Why don't you do a lot of research and find out who is putting on the rock concert, where they are from, how many people will be there, what safety concerns they have taken into consideration, that sort of thing." One evening I was sitting on the love seat, and my father was, as usual, on his adding machine, which he did at night. And I said, "Daddy, I got some information on the rock concert. I found out who's putting that on and that they are out of New York." And he said, "No daughter of mine is going to any rock concert." "But Daddy, you said I could make my own decision." "Young lady, you will not be going to any rock concert. You will not be destroying your life. Mother, do you hear me? She will not be going out of this house." "But Daddy, you don't understand." "Don't understand what? Are you pregnant? You will not leave this house. And in answer to yesterday's question, what should I do if my boyfriend comes to the window? You tell him there is a loaded gun under my daddy's bed, and he should not come to the window or the house." My mother said, "You're going to give your daddy a heart attack." My father's subtext: "You will not be getting pregnant like my sister, whom we are never going to mention." He was absolutely right, by the way. I was on the wrong track when it came to boys from the very beginning. My mother's subtext: "You will not be taken from me, the only man I have had in my life since I was 6. When I was young, I remember standing in front of my dresser thinking I was born to tell my father's story. I think that might very well be true. My father never told me about my grandfather trying to kill himself in front of him when my father was 5. But he told my brother and showed him the gun. I found papers later that said my father was valedictorian of his high school class. About once a year, he would say something like, "We were dirt poor. My mother was a textile worker, but she hurt her back, and she never worked after 40. My father was a drunk. He abandoned us. So my daddy left me to take care of my mother and my 2 sisters when I was 12. Then my sister Maribel had not 1, but 2 illegitimate children. This was during the Depression, and people would throw rocks at our house and call her names. I tried to defend her, and I made what money I could with a paper route. My mother said after my sister Maribel had taken care of her for 30 years that she was going to cut Maribel out of her will. And I said, "Mother, if you do, I will spend every nickel I have to break your will." I remember a man came to the high school and said anybody could go to college. I told him my situation and I asked him, "Sir, how can I go to college?" That man has not answered me yet. My mother and I went down to the bank and asked the banker if we could borrow $10 so that I could take a typing course. That was the day I decided I wanted to become a banker. Then I got married and had a beautiful baby girl, your sister. Within a year, my wife left the baby locked in the hot car and the police came. She started burning the baby's clothes and the baby's shoes. I lost every dime I had trying to get her well. By the age of 45, my father was president and chairman of the board of a bank. He was self-educated. He started the mental health board, was president or treasurer of many of the service groups in town. He also worked long and hard on a new community college. When he retired, they named the day for him. He died over 20 years after he retired, and the local paper ran a half-page article on the front page. In case I'm not being clear, this man was absolutely my hero, and he probably never knew it. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I visited his first wife several times with my half-sister, whom we call my sister. She was afraid to go alone. She said when she was a teenager, she went to visit her mother, and her mother came out of the kitchen with a huge carving knife, looked at my sister and said, "I'm going to kill you." This was long after the lobotomy. When we visited my sister's mother, there were Christmas cards taped to the nursing room door, and I was happy about that until I saw that they were all from the same Sunday school class over a period of years. The nurses said she had cookbooks, and she'd started fires when she thought she was cooking in her room. She also had a doll that had a rhinestone brooch pinned right over a long crack in its forehead. When my father was dying, I found a locked chest in the attic. Inside there was a large, heart-shaped box with love letters from his first wife. She called him the love of my soul. And there was a letter from Duke recommending her lobotomy. He had also kept my sister's tiny white baby shoes. I never met either of my grandfathers. I have seen one picture of my father's father, and in the picture he has 2 guns in his lap. He was a bigamist. The only thing I ever heard about either of my grandmothers was, "She was a hard woman." This is another thing you should screen for. Ancestry full of hard women. I know that's unfair, but it's too late for my soon-to-be ex-husband, and someone should benefit from his experience. But let me say this to you. It is much easier to forgive a parent who comes from a background like this. Be sure you're telling your kids all of the horrible things that happened to you when you were a kid, and sound sad when you do. It is my belief that my mother's history was just as bad. They didn't have 2 nickels to rub together during the Depression, and she lived with an uncle who lost his leg when he was run over by a train when he was 12 years old. But she was very chipper and upbeat. She was a member of the DAR. Lambeth was her maiden name. Using maiden names is a Southern tradition. She had a master's degree in accounting, but she said, "I tried never to make any more than your daddy, and I was quite successful at that." I gave her that joke. She only knew one joke. She also said stuff like, "Oh, Maribel Watson, you remember her, don't you? Hunter Watson's mother-in-law. Well, she died, but I was thinking about a conversation I had with her over tea at the centennial celebration of the Tuesday afternoon reading club, and she made what I think was an excellent point. She said, you know, Hitler was really just trying to help people." "What did you say, Mother?" "Yes," she pointed out, "Hitler was really just trying to help people. Of course, he went about it in the wrong way, I suppose." No matter what I say about my mother, I want us all to remember that she wanted a ballerina, an organist, or a harpist, and she got me. Just giving you the Disneyland tour through my family. And again, I would not marry a Southerner. Although my mother is very upbeat about her history and she can trace the family line back to 1040 AD and the Medicis, it just could not have been that great. When I was 11, I was standing by the radiator, which was about as tall as I was, and I said, "Mother, Emily said having a baby is something like going to the bathroom. Also, something about a man puts something somewhere. I don't understand." And she said, "It's called rape. Go look it up in the dictionary." For years, I went around thinking, What can I do to get myself raped? Well, I did think that, whether you like it or not. Fortunately, she had a little book for me with drawings. Her mother probably did not have such a book when sex was explained to her. So, this is a big step in the evolution of the species.
Yay. Thank you all very much for coming tonight. Thanks to the performers, and good night.